Theresa May survives to fight another day. She won the vote today, but only by postponing the big clash. Most of the Conservative rebel MPs agreed to a last-minute compromise. The amendment they wanted will now be introduced in the House of Lords next week, and will come back to the Commons after that. In the end, Dominic Grieve, the rebel leader, and his supporters, including Sarah Wollaston and Justine Greening, voted with the government on the vote we thought was going to be decisive. Philip Lee, the Justice Minister who resigned this morning so that he could vote against the government, ended up not voting at all. The vote was really about who controls the Brexit deal that the government hasn't negotiated yet. Most MPs support Britain staying in a customs union with the EU, but Theresa May wants to get out of it. How the tension is going to be resolved, and whether it can be resolved without the disaster of a no-deal Brexit, is the great question hanging over the rest of this year. A key point in the negotiations remains Britain's access to, on withdrawal from, the EU customs union. Since the referendum, there has been hot debate over the meaning of Brexit. Would it entail a full withdrawal from the existing agreement, known as hard Brexit, or the soft version in which we would remain part of the common customs area for most goods, as Turkey does? Number 10 has so far insisted that Brexit means Brexit and that Britain will be leaving the customs union, but may be inclined to change its position once the potential risks to the UK's economic outlook become clearer. Though progress was made last year, there has still been no solid agreement on whether there should be a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. To ensure borderless travel on the island, the countries must be in regulatory alignment and therefore adhere to the same rules as the customs union. In December, the Conservative Party's coalition partners, the DUP, refused a draft agreement that would place the UK/EU border in the Irish Sea due to its potential to undermine the union. May has promised that would not be the case and has suggested that a specific solution would need to be found. Despite protests from a small number of Conservative MPs, the government and the EU are largely in agreement that a transitional period is needed after Brexit. The talks, however, have reached an impasse. Though May has agreed that the UK will continue to contribute to the EU budget until 2021, the PM wants to be able to select which laws made during this time the UK will have to adhere to. Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier, seen here with EU Minister David Davis, has said the UK must adopt all of the laws passed during the transition, without any input from British ministers or MEPs. The Prime Minister has promised EU citizens already living in the UK the right to live and work here after Brexit, but the rights of those who arrive after Brexit Day remains unclear. May insists that those who arrive during the transition period should not be allowed to stay, whereas the EU believe the cut-off point should be later. Despite this being a key issue in negotiations, the government has yet to lay out exactly what it wants from a trade deal with the EU. Infighting within the cabinet has prevented a solid position from being reached, with some MPs content that no deal is better than a bad deal while others rally behind single market access. The EU has already confirmed that access to the single market would be impossible without the UK remaining in the customs union. The government has already begun trying to woo foreign leaders into prospective trade agreements, with various high-profile state visits to China, India and Canada for May, and the now infamous invitation to US President Donald Trump to visit London. However, the UK cannot make trade agreements with another country while it is still a member of the EU, and the potential loss of trade with the world's major powers is a source of anxiety for the PM. The EU has said the UK cannot secure trade deals during the transition period. Banks in the UK will be hit hard regardless of the Brexit outcome. The EU has refused to give British banks passporting rights to trade within the EU, dashing hopes of a special city deal. However, according to new reports, Germany has suggested allowing trade on the condition that the UK continues paying into the EU budget even after the transition period. There will be a vote on a customs union tomorrow, but that has been smoothed over by a form of words to keep it ambiguous. That battle has been postponed until the trade bill is voted on next month. So it looked as if today's vote on the meaningful vote would be the crunch point, and now that has been postponed too. The Prime Minister has conceded some ground. Her ministers have agreed to talk to Dominic Grieve, the polite, lawyerly former Attorney General, about his definition of a meaningful vote. He wants to give Parliament control of the Brexit negotiations if it doesn't approve of the government's deal by the end of November. Who knows what form of words will emerge from Grieve's negotiations with the government, but it is likely to be closer to what the Tory rebels want than what the government proposed today. Every time Theresa May gives ground, she gives ground to the soft Brexit majority in the Commons. We hear horror stories about how short-term the Downing Street operation is. Perhaps politics is always like this, but May's horizon never seems to lift beyond the middle of next week. And so far, it has worked. Today, it worked again. The whips didn't take the risk of losing the vote, so they put it off. Then she has to get through next week, or put it off until the week after that. Then she will find herself at the European Council in Brussels, at the end of this month, with her government's negotiating position still undecided. Theresa May has won and the nation has suffered after. That there will be a two-day session at Chequers, her country house, at which the cabinet will be, metaphorically, locked in and told they cannot come out until they have agreed a policy. On past form, they might close the yawning gulf between them by a few inches, and then decide to drift on. It may be that Theresa May is looking ahead further than next Wednesday. It may be that her strategy is risky rather than cautious. It may be that she has calculated that, the closer she gets to Brexit Day, the 29th of March next year, the more power she will have to bounce what is left of her cabinet into a soft Brexit deal that is acceptable both to the Commons and to the EU 27. If so, that could be dangerous. One of these days there won't be another day to fight for. The longer the Brexit crisis is postponed, the more likely it is that it will end in the disaster of no deal at all.